Hello and welcome back to another episode of Mystery Red Reads. I'm your host, Mystery Red, and this is my disclaimer. This beta read and concrete is at the author's request. This video is for learning purposes. Today we're looking at a piece of fan fiction. we're doing a beta read and concrete for a piece of fan fiction. I missed one of my screens there, but it's been so much chaos here that we're just going to roll with it. Okay. So today we are looking at Chapter 4 of Unbreakable Bonds by the Great Wicked. And I will provide a link to not only the story Unbreakable Bonds, but also to all of my other reads for the Great Wicked. And we are basically not going to do much of a recap. We're going to follow the summary and the notes here, and we are going to dive right in. I'm curious what the little lock means. I wonder what that means. I'm looking to see if the answer's anywhere. It's like, sometimes you can hover over something. I wonder if that, I don't know. I'm curious as to what it means. I'm wondering if I went and looked at one of my stories, if it would have one of the little locks. Wicked. Do you know what the little lock means? They know everything. They tell me all the things of how to do all the things that I don't know, because I'm in too much of a hurry to learn everything, which is kind of sad. I used to research and really, go deep into anything I wanted to know. And now it's like, how bad do I want to know it? And do I have enough time to really learn it? And can I get by with my basic knowledge? And I guess that's part of life in some instances. Okay, here we go. Unbreakable Bonds by the Great Wicked, Chapter 4, Battles Within. Our summary. Anakin attempts to help his troubled master, Obi-Wan, by challenging him to a sparring session. However, their session is interrupted by Obi-Wan's difficulty in focusing, and Anakin learns about Obi-Wan's complicated past with Cressida. Guilt adds a new dimension to his relationship with his son and his mother. Meanwhile, Cressida struggles with a mysterious illness, and a cryptic message from the High Council throws her future into uncertainty. Oh my God, do we have foreshadowing in the summary? Please don't tell me that Obi-Wan has just met his son and he's in love with the mother. He's going to remember that he's in love with the mother, or realize that he's in love with the mother, and then she's going to die. Please don't tell me that is what is happening here, because those are all that just popped right in my head with this one line right here, but we don't know. And I'm a reader who just jumped to a whole lot of conclusions, and I don't want to say I'm usually right, but we're gonna pretend that that's not gonna happen, because I don't like a sad story, and we're just gonna take it line by line, and we're gonna stay calm as I can. Okay. We're down here to notes now. Number 1. This is part 2 of the Unbreakable Bonds saga, but you do not have to read part 1. It just provides the history of the events that brought Obi-Wan and Cressida together. This is an explicit work. Oh my goodness. I'm guessing I'm going to get a heads up before and then we'll probably just, I don't know. You know what? We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Please note that, number 2, please note that the continuity between chapters is due to the fact that this story is over a year old and undergoing a rewrite as I progress as a writer. Any chapters that are named chapters, Return to Coruscant, are an indication that chapter has been edited. So I'm guessing if I go back up here and I hit my chapter index and I scroll down, what a great way to keep track. To keep track. So we're at chapter 4, where the Great Wicked has done some revisions, and chapter 5 on has not been touched yet. Lovely. Okay. Number 3, chapter name pronunciations. Yes, I definitely need that, because I feel like I have a general baseline knowledge of Star Wars, is there a name for people in that fandom? In my fandom, which is TMNT, we're called shellheads, and I'm whatever. I am what I am. Okay, chapter name pronunciations. Okay, Exar Kun is Exar Kun. Ulik Keldroma is Ulik Keldroma. Oh Lord. Oh my goodness. Ulik Keldroma. y'all, I'm going to be stopping to scroll back up here and check this out when it comes time to say someone's name if I'm going to be trippy about it. Darth Revan. Oh, I did it. I think I did it right. Okay. Satel Sean. Satil Sean. Dace Dieth. Oh, I got that one. I think I got that one right. Dace Dieth. Qui-Gon Jinn. Okay, Qui-Gon Jinn. I probably would have said Chi or Chi, but it's Qui-Gon Jinn. Okay. Tal On. Okay. So the ones that I'm going to have to look out for, Exar Kun I had correct. Ulick Keldroma. Darth Revan. I felt like that one was okay. Satil Sean. Dace Dieth. Qui-Gon Jinn. I should be okay if my brain will retain it. So at least we have this for reference. So we're going to keep going. Number 4. This story is rated explicit for adult content, including depictions of violence and intimate encounters between consenting adults. But this chapter contains no explicit content. Any explicit content will be marked by a double page break. We are dependent on my ability to remember this and all of this. Do not throw me into the fire if I forget, because it is likely to happen. My brain is a shifty thing. Number 5, if you like this story but are not interested in NSFW content, fear not, for an SFW version is posted to my fanfic.net account due to their guidelines prohibiting such content, and it can also be enjoyed there. My username is the same, The Great Wicked, and the story title also remains the same. I'm going to note that I have some of my first writings published over on fanfic.net, and I did not carry all of them over to AO3, and I decided that AO3 was where I wanted to make my home, and so I stopped kind of posting things on fanfic.net. I found AO3 much friendlier. I liked that it didn't have all the limitations and the censorship. And it's odd because now I'm a parent, and growing up, my material was never censored. But I also was kind of drawn to material that was pretty appropriate for me, with the exception of one book that I actually put down on my own in middle school, and it was actually a true story. It was a true crime story. And the reason I was curious about it is because it happened in a not too far from where I live, and so I remember it happening, and I wanted to know the details of it. And I started to read it, and I was so horrified, and there were pictures in it of the crime scene, that I didn't even finish it. I put it down. I was sick over it, and I think I was in middle school, so probably around 7th grade, which is my daughter's age now. So I'm like, I would not want her to look at that. But anyway, so got off on a censorship tangent. If I could stay focused, we will be in business. Let's see. I'm going to try to reel myself back in. I know. We were talking about fanfic.net and how this is posted there in a safe version. I have started writing where if I have explicit content, I have written it in a separate chapter so that one chapter will end, and then I'll have my warnings ahead of time at the top of the next chapter saying, hey, there's NSFW content in this chapter. If it's not for you, you can just skip it and go right on to the next chapter, and it will be as though you had encountered a fade to black situation. So that also works, but that's a great method of keeping it sorted. Number 6, I've received some requests and comments on how I insert page breaks and chapter artwork. Yes, I make them all myself and upload it to AO3. The process is complicated, so I created a series of tutorials that detail how this is done. It's available on my Tumblr, and it's listed under my writing resources, which is located under my master list of projects. That is pinned to my profile, so go check it out, and let's make these stories and posts that much prettier. And they are on Tumblr as The Great Wicked. I am on Tumblr as @AmunetRed, but I don't check it very often. Number 7. Thank you to Mystery Red Reads for reading my content and being so kind with your critiques and praises. So go check out her channel where she reads and critiques fanfic and original fiction, and give her some support. Maybe buy her a coffee. Ooh, yes, please. I love coffee. Coffee goes really well with a read, with the exception of you all don't want to listen to me slurping and sipping it. And you won't believe how often I'm trying to keep myself from reaching for my trail mix and trying to like munch while I'm reading, because that would totally sound great when you all played it. Okay, anyway, I try to I literally have to make myself not do that. It is more of a struggle than it sounds like, especially like right now when we are in the aftermath of the Hurricane Helen, whatever. I think it's Helen. I don't know. Anyway, I'm up in the I'm in the south, but I'm in the upper south, kind of like in the middle. And so we're getting the skirts of the rain and the wind, and everybody here is freaking out. And I don't really watch TV, so I don't watch the news and stuff. And I'm like, y'all, it just looks a little rainy outside. I think it's quite nice, actually. Oh, that is a little windy. Not too bad. I don't understand what's going on, but everybody here is freaking out. So let's see. Oh, look, there's my channel. Okay. 10 out of 10. Oh, I cannot recommend me enough. Subscribing is free. Oh, thank you so much. Ooh, I just want to hug you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Unbreakable Bonds. What if I take on this responsibility and grow to love that boy? What if something happens to him and I can't protect him? What if my attachment becomes too powerful? What if it leads me to darkness? Warning, canon divergence and original character content. I'm a fan of OCs, so we're rocking this story. Please do not translate, copy, or repost without my permission. Nope, we're too respectful for that, and we have your permission. Okay, Chapter 4, Battles Within. This chapter contains no explicit content. Here we go. Get up, we're going to spar. Obi-Wan blinked, trying to focus his bleary eyes as though it might somehow help him process Anakin's words as he barged right in. It was too early for this. He hadn't been expecting company, and he certainly wasn't dressed for it. Still, in his rumpled sleeping clothes, his hair tasseled and beard uncharacteristically scruffy, he felt decidedly un-Jedi-like. I'm gonna pause. I'm liking the setup here. I'm gonna note uncharacteristically, and we're gonna note decidedly. So, when it comes to ly words, I typically wouldn't have two in one sentence. So I personally would probably go with decidedly of the two. And the tousled hair and the rumpled sleeping clothes are going to do the job that, so if you take uncharacteristically out, you're not going to miss it. I'm going to pick right back up here, and I'm going to read this sentence as though uncharacteristically is not there, and we're going to continue so that you can taste it. Okay. Still in his rumpled sleeping clothes, hair tousled and beard scruffy, he felt decidedly un-Jedi-like. And I'm going to pause and apologize. I do not know if you all will be able to hear the squirrel invasion that is happening in my attic at this moment. But because of the weather, they have pried their way inside, and it is literally right above my ceiling, and it sounds like a party. And I have no idea what that's going to sound like on these videos. And so if you hear screeches, bizarre noises, I don't know what is happening up there, but I'm going to have to muscle through it. Okay. Here we go. No, Anakin, please do come in, because apparently the concept of privacy is just a myth around here, Obi-Wan muttered dryly, watching as Anakin plucked a shura fruit from the small table. Shura fruit. I'm mad because I fumbled over that, so I'm a little annoyed that I'm fumbling up my read. I'm annoyed enough that my OCD wants me to go back here and start up here and try again, but we're going to resist that because I think it's better for me to try to resist that urge. We're going to see if it gets worse. I'm going to have to regroup. I'm so sorry. I have some ADHD, and if I don't pull it together, it's going to get worse. Okay. You know what? I'm sorry. Okay. I don't edit my videos, and I won't go back, so you guys get to get this raw thing of me making mistakes too, and so that's a little embarrassing on my end. Still in his rumpled sleeping clothes, hair tasseled and beard scruffy, he felt decidedly un-Jedi-like. No, Anakin, please do come in, because apparently the concept of privacy is just a myth around here, Obi-Wan muttered dryly, watching as Anakin plucked a shura fruit from the small table. With an exaggerated flourish, Anakin took a huge, messy bite, juice dribbling down his chin. Obi-Wan suppressed a wince. Help yourself, he added, taking a seat, one leg crossed over the other at the knee, feigning disinterest. Thanks, I knew you wouldn't mind, Anakin replied, flashing a grin as he chewed obnoxiously. Ooh, okay, so I like this behavior from Anakin, but I'm just like getting hung up on the ly word. I really love it though. I can just see the grin and the little bit of a cockiness. Yeah, I'm liking it. Okay. Thanks. I knew you wouldn't mind. I'm just gonna drip juice all over everywhere. Okay. A rational person might have knocked before entering, asked to sit, or at least started the conversation with a polite, "Good morning, Master Kenobi. Care for some breakfast and tea? Or perhaps, how are you faring today? I've come to check on your well-being." But Anakin Skywalker was not most people. Obi-Wan settled into his chair, waiting for an explanation. As Anakin finished his ridiculously large bite, Obi-Wan couldn't help but wonder how Padme found this charming. Perhaps Anakin behaved better around her. He could only hope for her sake. Yeah, I don't know that he really acts better around her all the time. I guess in some respects, depending on how serious the situation is, and that is all that has been painted to us by the Great Wicked in the previous chapters. I have a teenage son who is home today running around. It is circus day in my house, and it's really not helping every other thing that is going on with me. Let's see. I do think my reading got a little bit better, though, even though I did do exactly what I said I wasn't going to do, and I'm going to own that too. Okay. Obi-Wan settled into his chair, waiting for an explanation. As Anakin finished his ridiculously large bite, Obi-Wan couldn't help but wonder how Padme found this charming. Perhaps Anakin behaved better around her. He could only hope for her sake. For a moment, the only sound was Anakin chewing, quite loudly. "Did you come to raid my breakfast? Or was there something on your mind?" Obi-Wan asked, resting his head on his hand and raising an eyebrow. "Both, actually," Anakin replied, taking another sloppy bite of the fruit's golden skin, slurping in a way that made Obi-Wan's eye twitch, but mostly sparring. I'm going to pause again. Okay, what I'm going to do with the adverbs is I'm just going to highlight them for the Great Wicked, and they can choose what to do with them. I think by now you've probably got the gist of my position on them, where I'm kind of in wishy-washy about it, because I'm not a stringent rule follower, but rules that have been harped on to me from multiple various resources and through various different lessons are the ones that I'll probably mention again the most, because the reason I'm thinking that or approaching them that way is I tend to be a little bit of a rule bender or breaker. I'm a little more open-minded and accepting, but you have whatever your goal is for your work to keep in mind. This is fan fiction. Ultimately, this is for one, you, the author, and two, anyone else who might enjoy it. But it's not for profit. It's not for money. At this point, the Great Wicked is exercising a revision and upgrading their skill in writing and practicing it in this format. And that's kind of how I view fan fiction as well, is for me to write the story that I want to read and then practice the art of writing and hopefully get better at it and get to enjoy the feedback that comes with fan fiction writing. If I was writing professionally, then I would probably be strict, a little more strict, and look very closely at my guidebooks, which I have published. I did not publish them, but I have references, resource books that I pull out, especially when I'm scrubbing a manuscript that I intend to query. And I'll go through the manuscript for each individual thing on my checklist will get a pass. And so I will look at the entire document for one specific thing and then make another pass over the same document for the next thing on the list, scrubbing it. So I'm just going to highlight these. and leave them for the Great Wicked to decide what they want to do with. If there's more than one in a sentence or more than one in a paragraph too close together, then I'd be more inclined to do something with them. We're going to keep going. Did you come to raid my breakfast, or was there something on your mind? We already read that. I went back to highlight it. Okay, so where am I down? Both, actually, Anakin replied, taking another sloppy bite of the fruit's golden skin. Slurping. This was the other one I wanted to show you. You're missing I-N in your slurping. In a way that made Obi-Wan's eye twitch, but mostly sparring. Obi-Wan pinched the bridge of his nose. It wasn't that he didn't want to see Anakin or that he was bothered by his presence. Far from it. After the last 2.5 weeks, he craved some semblance of normalcy, and in his own way, Anakin provided that. Yet despite knowing that Anakin's antics were meant to rouse him from solitude by any means necessary, by any irritating means necessary, they were still driving him mad. He truly detested the sound of loud chewing, and he knew Anakin was weaponizing it against him. Of course, Obi-Wan muttered, because what could be better than waking up to an unsolicited company and a lightsaber duel? Anakin paused mid-chew, a grin spreading across his face. You've always said I have impeccable timing. Yes, well, Obi-Wan sighed, rubbing his temples. That was sarcasm, Anakin. You've been hiding in here for days, Obi-Wan. It's time to get up and do something. We'll start with some lightsaber training, Anakin said, his tone almost teasing. Sparring, Anakin? Obi-Wan's voice was a low murmur, fatigue threading through it. His lips twitched. Do you really believe that dueling is the solution to all of life's problems? Well, Anakin replied, stretching his arms with a casual shrug. It works for me. Obi-Wan raised an eyebrow. Have you ever considered that might not be normal? I'm going to pause. I do believe we had more than one raising of an eyebrow in a short duration here. Scrolling back to see if I'm correct. There it is, right here. Obi-Wan asked, resting his head on his hand and raising an eyebrow. So my suggestion on that echo there would be to just omit this portion of this sentence, and that way it'll still read just fine. It's easier to take something out than it is to have to add something, but it's not a problem. So that would reread as, did you come to raid my breakfast, or was there something on your mind? Obi-Wan asked, resting his head on his hand. There you go. It still works, and it takes out the echo. We're going to keep going. Anakin grinned. It's a start. Come on, give your mind a break. You've been in this room overthinking into oblivion. Obi-Wan couldn't muster a witty retort because Anakin was right. His silence was all the ammunition Anakin needed to press on. So let's get dressed, Anakin continued, leaning against the doorframe. Maybe a bit of meditation afterward, then some more sparring. Then we'll see if you're still in the mood for moping. I am not moping, Obi-Wan shot back, though his disheveled appearance at the state of his quarters suggested otherwise. Anakin glanced around, making his point without words. Well, is whatever you call this helping? There was no stopping the chosen one when he set his mind to something. Master or not, some things would never change. He felt a mix of pride and exasperation. Why did Anakin always choose the most inconvenient moments to care? Yet when Obi-Wan offered such guidance, it was merely taken under consideration and promptly forgotten. Padme is worried about you, Anakin said, crossing his arms. You told her, didn't you? Obi-Wan replied, a hint of accusation to his tone. Anakin nodded, unapologetic. Obi-Wan sighed, processing Anakin's lack of specifics. I seem to recall Master Yoda reminding you rather recently to not break any more rules. He knew Anakin was right. He needed the push to confront the world outside his door, but finding the motivation was easier said than done. Defeated, he gave a reluctant nod. Sparring? Sparring. A silent stare-down stretched on between them until Obi-Wan relented and stood, realizing that arguing with Anakin was futile. Of course. Why confront my inner turmoil when I can just face your overconfidence in a duel? Obi-Wan mumbled to himself. I'm pausing. Okay, so we have like Obi-Wan's musing right here. And I'm kind of wondering if this line of dialogue by Obi-Wan should just be connected to this line above, since it's still in his headspace. When I read this, I was kind of expecting this one to potentially be from Anakin, but it fit from Obi-Wan. And And as I was reading it, I kind of wondered if it was going to be a situation where I contemplated whether or not this should be unified into a paragraph. We're going to keep going. Many were often taken aback by Obi-Wan's dry remarks, but it was a good sign. If he were truly in a bad place, he wouldn't be able to manage a response at all. Anakin chuckled, clapping Obi-Wan on the shoulder. See, you're already getting into the spirit of things. Anakin paused and scrunched his nose. You might want to shower first. You smell like a rancor pit. Obi-Wan shot him a deadpan look. Yes, well, forgive me if I wasn't in the mood to indulge in aromatic luxuries while grappling with the existential mysteries of fatherhood and the Force. Anakin laughed, pushing him toward the refresher. All right, fair enough. But seriously, take a shower before we spar. I don't need the distraction of your stench clouding my focus. Fine, I'll indulge you, master of fresh air. Wouldn't want your delicate senses to suffer. You know, they say cleanliness is next to godliness, Anakin quipped. As Obi-Wan called back over his shoulder, a small smile crept onto his face. And they also say pride comes before a fall. So watch yourself in that duel, Anakin. Despite feeling irritated by his former Padawan's tactics, okay, I'm going to pause. I kind of started to trip up back here, but I don't see any problem with it. I think maybe I was distracted because I was actually also laughing. I'm going to give it one more roll through, starting from here. As Obi-Wan called back over his shoulder, a small smile crept onto his face. And they also say pride comes before a fall. So watch yourself in that duel, Anakin. Despite feeling irritated by his former Padawan's tactics, he couldn't help but appreciate that Anakin wasn't actually kicking him in the backside. If the roles were reversed, he would likely have done the same, though he was sure Anakin wouldn't shy away from being a father. In that regard, Anakin was a better Jedi than Obi-Wan was. As the hot water streamed, I'm pausing, but this time it's a reader musing. Okay, so I wanted to keep reading because it's reading well, but I'm also pausing because I'm like, oh, I don't. So Obi-Wan's thinking that Anakin's, I guess, he's thinking he wouldn't shy away from being a father, and Obi-Wan feels like he is. I mean, this isn't like a normal situation. I don't think he's given himself enough grace, basically, but hopefully someone else will say that to him as we continue reading. But I'm thinking, okay, he just found out about this child that is 10 years old. I mean, he's already missed out on the first 10 years of his life. He didn't even know he existed. To be fair to Obi-Wan, that's a shock. And I know that he'll do the right thing because he's a good person. That's just, he's very driven by what is right. So I feel like ultimately he's going to get it together and he's going to come through. But so I'm not really like worried about that part, but I am sad for him thinking that he's off to a bad start. He hasn't actually started yet. He's still reeling, and that's okay. All right, here we go. As the hot water streamed over him, waking. Darn it. Trying again. As the hot water streamed over him, waking his dulled senses, Obi-Wan began to feel a bit better. He lingered under the spray, contemplating that perhaps some good-natured sparring was exactly what he needed to take his mind off things, at least for a while. I'm just going to say he's going to need another shower after the sparring thing. I'm not saying he shouldn't shower, as in all fairness, but he's going to need another shower after they spar because, I'm sorry, men get all smelly when they get all sweaty. Okay, moving on. Lightsabers clashed in the training room, the sound echoing off the walls like an electrical storm, but the energy felt lopsided. Obi-Wan's calculated precision had vanished. Instead of a fluid and graceful dance, he fumbled like a novice. His mind was miles away, and his combat prowess suffered for it. Every time Anakin launched an attack, Obi-Wan found himself making constant mistakes. His defense, typically a fortress built on the principles of Sorisu, now resembled a flimsy shield. A quick swipe to the left turned into an awkward stumble, and a failed parry left him open to Anakin's relentless strikes. He hesitated at critical moments, even when Anakin offered him clear openings. Instead of standing his ground, he stepped back, allowing Anakin to advance. Then, in an attempt to make up for his losses, Obi-Wan overextended his attacks, only to leave himself vulnerable to Anakin's counters. Each misstep chipped away at his confidence, further clouding his focus and leaving him at Anakin's mercy. Meanwhile, Anakin flowed with the poise of a seasoned warrior, fluid and on point. allowing him to anticipate Obi-Wan's every strike as if they were written in the stars. He read the subtle shifts in his master's posture and adjusted his own stance accordingly, exploiting every opening with an ease that showed his growth as a Jedi. Each of his victories felt like a carefully crafted masterpiece, each strike and parry executed with an artist's touch. Anakin's confidence radiated through the room, a stark contrast to Obi-Wan's uncharacteristic faltering. In the past, Anakin often found himself on the defensive, but today he was the one orchestrating the flow of battle, forcing Obi-Wan to adapt to his rhythm. It was a performance that would normally make Obi-Wan swell with pride, if only he weren't the one on the losing end. "You're off your game, Master," Anakin said, a smirk playing at his lips as he effortlessly dodged a clumsy lunge that nearly sent Obi-Wan sprawling. I'm going to pause. I'm going to mark off accordingly up here. Effortlessly here, which I don't think you needed, and nearly next to it. So I would keep nearly and omit effortlessly. "Clearly," Obi-Wan grumbled, narrowly. Do we have narrowly again? Did it come up before? Did I just say it? I felt like I had just said it. Maybe I just have so many LYs. Okay. "Clearly," Obi-Wan grumbled, narrowly avoiding another swing that would have knocked him to the ground. Their lightsabers clashed in brilliant flashes of blue, thrusting and slicing until the blades locked in a familiar cross. Anakin's strength bore down with an almost playful force, but Obi-Wan could feel the strain in his arms as he struggled to hold his ground. The pressure was mounting, and for a moment it was clear who had the upper hand. Obi-Wan's muscles burned as his blade was forced lower, the weight of the lock tipping the balance in Anakin's favor. "Who are you thinking of, Master? Solon or Cressida?" Anakin asked as he pushed hard, seeing Obi-Wan back several steps. Obi-Wan grumbled in response. "Neither," he replied, his focus wavering as he felt the weight of his thoughts dragging him down. "Ah, the classic non-answer," Anakin quipped, effortlessly parrying a half-hearted thrust that left Obi-Wan exposed. "You know, that only tells me I'm right." Finally, the inevitable occurred. Obi-Wan found himself on his back with a painful grunt again, lightsaber deactivated beside him, staring up at the ceiling. He contemplated its mysteries for a moment before shifting his gaze to Anakin, who loomed above him, his expression somewhere between teasing and concern. "Are you planning on getting up, or is the floor really that comfortable?" Anakin asked, unable to suppress a triumphant grin. "No, I don't think so." Obi-Wan's voice was heavy with fatigue, a hint of resignation coloring his words. "Perhaps the floor has more to offer me today." Anakin chuckled, extending a hand to help his master to his feet. "Well, it seems lightsaber combat isn't favoring you. Perhaps you'll be better suited for meditation." Obi-Wan accepted the hand and rose to his feet, a growing ache in his back. "Ah, yes, the quieter battles. I suppose I should be grateful for the chance to change the battlefield. Meditation was never really your strong suit. Perhaps I'll gain back some of my lost pride." Anakin's grin widened. "What was it you said about pride coming before the fall?" He clapped a hand on his master's shoulder, and for a moment, the weight of recent events lightened, if only slightly. "Solon Cal is the son of Master Obi-Wan Kenobi." The sound of her voice echoed in Obi-Wan's mind, the words ringing like a bell, loud and insistent. Each repetition reverberated in his thoughts, a stark reminder of the moment that had shifted everything. Time seemed to slow as her gaze locked with his, the weight of the revelation hanging in the air, drowning out all else. "Hello, Obi-Wan." Her gray eyes had pierced through the haze of time, locking him in place within the council chamber, just as they had 10 years ago. He could still remember the way she'd look at him from the warmth of his bed in the dark hours of the night, her gaze holding him captive, their limbs tangled in breathless stillness. The meditation chamber exclusive to the High Council members should have been a cocoon of harmony, yet even there he fared no better. He fidgeted endlessly, the serene atmosphere doing little to quell the storm within him. His mind felt like a chaotic battlefield, each breath echoing with unresolved tension. Just as quickly, his eyes snapped open, pulling him back to the present. He found Anakin sitting beside him, a portrait of serenity. Obi-Wan took a deep breath, trying to regain control, but his thoughts spiraled out of reach. Another memory surfaced. Solon sitting on that bench, legs swinging with carefree innocence, their easy conversation now a distant echo. The transformation on Solon's face upon learning the truth, the mixture of disbelief and hope dancing in his eyes, haunted him. Anakin opened his eyes and turned to look at his troubled master. I'm going to pause. We have an echo on eyes, and it's like, it's reading so beautifully. I don't want to fool with it for the sake of fan fiction. I think it's fine. I'm going to note that I observed it. If it bothers you, then you know where to find it. I'm just going to, where's my little cursor guy? Right there and right there. And we're going to roll on. You know, Anakin, he finally said, his voice tinged with vulnerability. Sometimes I wonder if the Force is playing some elaborate prank on us. It's hard to find balance when everything feels so uncertain. I don't think the Force is as cruel or vindictive as you make it out to be, Anakin replied. Perhaps not, Obi-Wan conceded, looking at the ground. Meditation was a lost cause to him. I'm struggling, Anakin, truly. It's like navigating a maze in the dark, underwater, upside down. Drunk. That can't be easy. Anakin's voice carried an unusual blend of compassion. Just imagine how Solon must feel. Obi-Wan's face fell. Solon. He had, of course, thought about Solon's perspective. For days it had gnawed at him, but he pushed it away each time, yet it remained a persistent ache he couldn't quite shake. But now, with Anakin mentioning it out loud, it was like a fresh jab to the ribs. Guilt surged through him, sharp and immediate. He barely had a moment to let it sink in before Anakin twisted the metaphorical knife. I mean, to find out that the legendary war hero you've admired your whole life is actually your father and that everything you believe was just a protective lie, Anakin continued, his voice laced with exaggerated seriousness. Even speaking to him, sharing smiles and friendly conversation, only for it to end just like that, and then no one sees him for days while the High Council drags its feet deciding your fate. It must be disheartening. I'd be left wondering what I did wrong, even questioning my place at the temple. Obi-Wan felt a flush of embarrassment, not just from Anakin's words, but from the truth behind them. They weren't meant to inflict anguish, but to push Obi-Wan to acknowledge what he had been avoiding. He wanted to defend himself, to rationalize his distance, but deep down he knew he had no excuse. Mace had cautioned him to approach the boy gently, now that the truth had been confirmed. That had been over a week ago, and he had done nothing. If guilt had been gnawing at him before, it was now eating him alive. He had let his fear paralyze him. Every time he thought back to his conversation with Solon outside the council chamber, a heavy weight of regret settled in his chest, and it was only getting heavier. It didn't get much worse than that, but Anakin wasn't done yet. And Cressida, too, Anakin pressed on, shaking his head in disbelief. Having to raise a son in complete secrecy for 10 years, always in danger, constantly looking over her shoulder, I can't imagine how she managed such a thing. Probably many sleepless nights. He blew out a heavy breath, emphasizing his apparent bewilderment. No one she could truly count on, probably pushed to her limits mentally and physically more times than she could count. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. Then, when she finally returns to the place she should feel safe, she's met with an endless barrage of questions and criticisms. It must be incredibly painful for her. Obi-Wan blew out an exasperated breath, frustration evident in his posture, judging from the lines on his forehead. All right, you've made your point, Anakin. Anakin smirked. Have I now? Painfully so. You sure? Anakin asked. He just couldn't resist. I thought I could bring up a few other points about how Solon must be feeling lost and out of place, and maybe how Cressida's feeling like a stranger among our people. No, that's quite enough. You paint an excruciating portrait. After a few minutes, Anakin reached into his pocket and produced something Obi-Wan hadn't seen in many years, a small, smooth, rounded stone. He tossed it up into his hand, catching it several times before holding it out to Obi-Wan. For a moment, Obi-Wan simply stared. Then he breathed out a sigh, regarding the simple object with the same fondness one might expect as if he was handling an ancient treasure. A warmth fluttered in his chest as he looked at the stone before finally accepting it. He had given Anakin on his 13th birthday the same way. We're going to try to get it right. Hang on. We're going to start over once I go back and check it. I got to roll back. Ooh, way back. Oh, way back. We're going to do it right. Qui-Gon Jinn. Qui-Gon Jinn. Try it again. Here we go. gonna get it. I'm gonna get it. He had given Anakin on his 13th birthday the same way Qui-Gon, sorry, it doesn't say Jinn, it just says Qui-Gon. We're gonna try again. He had given Anakin on his 13th birthday the same way Qui-Gon had gifted it to Obi-Wan years before in an attempt to help him meditate. Its familiar texture anchored him, grounding him in a way that nothing else could, and it felt good to have it in his hand again. Okay, so really quick. So we're talking about the stone. We've mentioned it up here. For a moment, Obi-Wan simply stared. Then he breathed out a sigh, regarding the simple object with the same fondness one might expect as if he was handling an ancient treasure. A warmth fluttered in his chest as he looked at the stone before finally accepting it. He had given Anakin on his 13th birthday. I think I'm wanting given it. He had given the stone. Okay, here's the thing. There's the potential for this text to join this text above it for a whole paragraph. Or you can keep it separate as it is and just say he had given the stone to Anakin on his 13th birthday. If you choose to have these sentences join the paragraph above, I would say he had given it because the sentence before has the stone in it. Okay, so I'm going to read it both ways for example. A warmth fluttered in his chest as he looked at the stone before finally accepting it. He had given it to Anakin on his 13th birthday, the same way Qui-Gon had gifted it to Obi-Wan years before in an attempt to help him meditate. Its familiar texture, Okay, so that is that's with me saying he had given it to Anakin. Given it to. So you're missing a couple words right in there between given and Anakin, and you could just move this up, add those couple of words, bam, you're off again. Or you can keep it the way it is. A warmth fluttered in his chest as he looked at the stone before finally accepting it. And then you go to the next paragraph. He had given the stone to Anakin on his 13th birthday, the same way Qui-Gon had gifted it to Obi-Wan years before. So both ways work. I lean towards the first and joining this and making it a full paragraph there, 4 sentences, and just saying he had given it to. But either way, you're needing some words between given and Anakin. All right, we're going to keep going. It brought him a sense of peace as he levitated it up into the air, reflecting on all the times it had helped him find his way. I don't know how to be a father, Anakin. It's a role I never expected to have, and I wouldn't even know where to start, he admitted. Anakin nodded. You didn't know how to be a Jedi either, remember? But you became one of the finest masters the Order has seen. Those things are hardly the same, Obi-Wan's eyes. Oh, okay, so you've got Obi-Wan narrowed his eyes slightly. First, I would throw out the adverb. I don't think you need it. And there's something about the order of this that might between what the typical order is, which is what my mouth wanted to say, versus what we have. Those things are hardly the same. Obi-Wan narrowed his eyes, sarcasm creeping back in. I want to omit the adverb, so I'm just going to pretend it's not there. I kind of want it to be Obi-Wan's eyes narrowed, sarcasm creeping back in could probably be omitted. I don't need anything from here on. I just want this little bit right here. Those things are hardly the same. Obi-Wan's eyes narrowed. A pity there isn't a compendium of Jedi who could teach me to be a father. As he trailed off, he caught the tremble in Anakin's shoulders, barely suppressing a laugh. What's so amusing, Anakin? Okay, so you've got Anakin. I would probably just omit this one and just roll with it. I'm going to try that. Let's just try it. As he trailed off, he caught the tremble in Anakin's shoulders, barely suppressing a laugh. What's so amusing? Anakin tilted his head suggestively, his grin widening as his unspoken suggestion dawned on Obi-Wan. Oh no, absolutely not. If you think I'm taking your parenting advice, you're out of your mind. You never know, Obi-Wan. I could be a good master for you. Ah, wise words indeed from the man who thought hiding a secret marriage with a sitting senator he was sworn to protect was a good idea. He shook his head. Parenting advice from the chosen one? What could possibly go wrong? Hey, I'm just saying, I did pretty well with... Asaka? Is this one up here in the glossary? No, it is not. I'm thinking it's Asaka. If it is not, my apologies. We're going to keep going. Hey, I'm just saying I did pretty well with Asaka as my Padawan. A Padawan is not the same as a child, Anakin, but you let me know how your parenting lectures go. His sarcasm dripped from every word. Anakin grinned, reveling in the banter. Great! I'll make sure to give you all the Anakin's Guide to Fatherhood upon its publication. I'm sure it'll be a bestseller. Oh, dear Force, please spare us. For the first time in days, tension eased, but then a somber note returned. I don't know how such a thing could happen. It's all unexpected. Anakin, ever the provocateur, pressed on. Well, I believe it's simple biology. You see, Obi-Wan, when a man and a woman... Obi-Wan's... I'm sorry. For Anakin to be having this conversation to his elder is hilarious. Okay. Oh my goodness. Obi-Wan quickly cut him off, a pleading tone in his voice. Anakin, I beg of you, do not finish that sentence. We both know I understand the mechanics of it all. Anakin smirked, leaning back with a satisfied air. Just checking. It's a topic that might need revisiting, considering your new role. Obi-Wan sighed, shaking his head. That is not the conversation I thought I would be having when I woke up this morning. But here we are, Anakin chuckled, the levity hanging in the air as they both took a moment to absorb the absurdity of it all. Several seconds passed, and Anakin shifted, turning to face Obi-Wan, regarding into his master as though he was a puzzle to be solved. So... Obi-Wan didn't wait for him to finish, not even bothering to look up from the rock in his hands. You know what to do about Cressida. You want to know about Cressida. It wasn't a question. Can you blame me? You've never allowed yourself to get close to anyone, but the way you defended her in the council chamber, well, it makes one wonder. I'm not the only one who noticed. Indeed, Obi-Wan replied, huffing out a breath of acceptance. She's beautiful. I mean, she's no Padme, but I have to say, Obi-Wan, I never knew you had it in you. Anakin smirked. He caught Obi-Wan's sharp gaze and realized he might have struck a sensitive nerve. I don't mean to cause you anguish, Obi-Wan. It just seems so out of character for you. Obi-Wan's expression softened as he looked down, collecting his thoughts. Well, you must remember that young Obi-Wan was a very different person, Anakin. And as you pointed out, Cressida is undeniably beautiful. He turned the small rock over in his hands. See, you should have seen her 10 years ago. Utterly fearless, able to make anyone smile, a wealth of compassion. It was a different time then, before the war. Before everything. Anakin said nothing, his brow furrowing in thought. You still don't understand, Obi-Wan said, and Anakin shook his head. Obi-Wan met Anakin's gaze, his eyes reflecting regret and introspection. At the time, I didn't think our paths would cross again. I let myself believe that with Cressida, it could be a fleeting connection, a physical intimacy without the emotional consequences. Anakin tilted his head, a more understanding tone in his voice. So Cressida was the safest option for you? That's part of it. What's the other part? Obi-Wan paused as he wrestled with the question. He didn't know what bothered him more, the question or the answer. Anakin, surely I don't need to explain the loneliness and desire for comfort that comes with loss and change to you of all people. He glanced at Anakin, checking to see if he might take offense, but his friend's face held no trace of judgment. I was struggling, and at first it was a close friend reaching out to make sure I was all right. As I said in the council chamber, it evolved from there. He couldn't quite bring himself to say aloud that he craved the kind of touch and comfort only a lover could offer, but Anakin seemed to understand. Yes, Anakin, she was the safest option, or so I believed. But life has a way of surprising us, doesn't it? His voice carried a hint of resignation. I trusted myself with her. We'd been there for each other before. This was just another time we needed each other. It was logical, and nothing about what happened was reckless or without foresight. We both knew what we were doing, and look where it's brought us. Why do you think I never explored anything further with Satine? Obi-Wan's voice was quiet, distant, as though the question had been weighing on him for years. Anakin tilted his head. To be honest, I was never sure if you did. Obi-Wan exhaled slowly, his eyes narrowing as if trying to push away the memory. I wanted to, many times, but his voice faltered. I couldn't bring myself to do it. Something inside me always stopped. I'm going to pause. This is reading really well and I want to keep rolling with it, but I want to note back here that I think it's like Obi-Wan's dialogue and then it's still Obi-Wan's dialogue. Yeah. Usually there'd be something from Anakin, an expression or something, just a glimpse away before he spoke again. I can see why, like, why you've got the separation, because it would be a really long paragraph if you put all that dialogue together. I don't know. I think it's fine for the sake of fan fiction. I think it's fine. I'm just gonna note that I observed it. I did notice it, and we're gonna keep going. He closed his eyes, the memory of Satine's final moments rushing back with cruel clarity. It had been less than a year since Mandalore, since the day he held her in his arms, watching the light in her eyes fade. The grief still clung to him like a shadow he couldn't shake. Anakin's voice softened. Did you love her? Obi-Wan didn't answer right away. He opened his mouth as if to speak, but no words came. In the past, the answer might have been simple. Yes. But now, what was love? Could he still define it after years of denial, restraint, and loss? What was left of it after watching Satine slip away? A great sadness tightened his chest, a weight he'd carried since the moment she was gone, one he wasn't sure he could ever lift. Then he wondered if the her Anakin spoke of was Satine or Cressida, and in either case he didn't know. He cared very much for both women in different ways, and he wasn't sure which one meant what. Anakin's brow furrowed in thought. We're always warned that attachment is dangerous, that it leads to fear and suffering. But sometimes the comfort of being close to someone, of letting them in, makes the risk worth it. An embrace, a kiss. He paused for a beat, his voice softening as he searched Obi-Wan's eyes. It's not always about following the rules, but finding someone that gives you the strength to carry on, even if it's just for a moment. The two men fell into a comfortable silence, the ambient glow of the meditation chamber surrounding them like a soft embrace. Obi-Wan held out the river stone, offering it back to Anakin. But Anakin shook his head, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth as he gestured for Obi-Wan to keep it. Obi-Wan wouldn't admit it, but he was grateful for the gesture, so much so he didn't realize how tightly he was clutching the stone. He would hold on to it for a little bit. We have a little bit of a long sentence right there. It read okay. Oops. Right. My little highlighter dude is not wanting to work for me. Yep, it's just going to do its own thing. I'm trying to go right here. It was a little bit long, but then the one beneath it is too. They're reading okay, so I'm just rolling with it. What do you want to do, Obi-Wan? Anakin asked simply, leaning back against the cool stone wall, his arms crossed casually. 2 LYs in there. I'd probably drop them both. Just for the sake of, I'm going to read it to you again without the adverbs, and we'll see what you think. What do you want to do, Obi-Wan? We're gonna try it again. What do you want to do, Obi-Wan? Anakin. Why is that happening? So frustrating. We're gonna try it again. What do you want to do, Obi-Wan? Anakin asked, leaning back against the cool stone wall, his arms crossed. Obi-Wan sighed, looking out at nothing. I don't know, Anakin. I only know what feels right, and I believe it's time for Solon to begin his training as a Jedi. It's his birthright, after all, and he belongs here. Would you like to know him? Anakin asked gently. He didn't need to squeeze the stone to know that no answers would come from it. He knew the answer, and it frightened him. Yes? Anakin nodded, his expression earnest. Well, knowing what you want is at least a step. Yes, but in what direction? Obi-Wan replied, raising an eyebrow as he looked at Anakin. Anakin shrugged. That remains to be seen, but is definitely better than doing nothing. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. I don't expect an exception to be made for us, but surely there must be a way forward that doesn't involve denying Solon what he deserves. We can't ignore his potential and the responsibility that comes with it. The Council makes exceptions every day, Obi-Wan. Not like this, Obi-Wan countered. Only the Sith deal in absolutes, Anakin winked. At that, Obi-Wan cracked a reluctant smile. Anakin had a point. They made an exception for me and Padme, didn't they? Obi-Wan rolled his eyes, fighting a smile. Yes, well, we can't all be the chosen one, Anakin. Anakin's grin widened, the lightness of their conversation rekindling a familiar camaraderie. The old Republic saw a Jedi Order strengthened by family bonds. Its numbers flourished. I see no reason we can't learn from our predecessors. In the end, individuals will do as their hearts and consciences dictate. How much stronger might our order become if we weren't losing so many because we forbid the connections that give us purpose? Obi-Wan's expression shifted, a shadow crossing his features. The old Republic also saw some of its greatest warriors fall to the dark side because of those attachments. Ulick. Okay, so these names are going to be at the top. I've got Darth Ravan, Exar Kun, Ulick Keldroma. We're going to go back up to the top. Back. I'm probably not going to get them all right when they're all this close together. All right, so Ulick Keldroma. I got the Keldroma part. Ulick. Exar Kun, Ulick, Darth Raven. Satil Dace Dieth. I'm not going to agonize over this. We're going to give it a go, and we're going to keep rolling. Ulick Keldroma, Darth Raven, Exar Kun. I think I've got it. Ulick. All right. Okay. Wow. Okay, here we go. Obi-Wan's expression shifted, a shadow crossing his features. The old Republic also saw some of its greatest warriors fall to the dark side because of those attachments. Ulick Keldroma, Exar Kun, Darth Raven. Any of those cautionary tales sound familiar? His asked, as though reciting an ingrained doctrine. There's a reason the Order banned attachments, Anakin, he insisted. Okay. I think we just want he asked. So his should be he, and we're good to go. Well, maybe it's time to reconsider the rules. Yes, we've known great losses, but also great triumphs. Satil Shan, Dace Diath, and need I remind you, Darth Raven may have fallen to the dark side, but he was redeemed and returned to the light. Redemption doesn't change the fact that his attachments nearly led to his downfall, Obi-Wan pointed out, his brow furrowed with concern. True, Anakin conceded, but it also shows that the bonds we form can lead to growth and healing. Isn't that worth considering? Obi-Wan sighed, his resolve faltering slightly. Anakin's argument was compelling, and somewhere deep down, Obi-Wan knew there was some truth in it. Still, he had spent years upholding the Jedi Code. Breaking from that wasn't something he could do so easily. I understand your point, Anakin, Obi-Wan said, his voice softer now, almost contemplative. But it's a dangerous line to walk. Not everyone comes back like Revan. For every redemption, there are countless more who fall and never return. He slipped the rock into his pocket, the weight of it as comforting as his lightsaber at his side. He smiled faintly at Anakin. You know, in times like these, I find myself wondering what Qui-Gon would have done. His voice grew more distant, thoughtful. He didn't expect an answer from Anakin. How could he? Anakin had only known Qui-Gon for a few short weeks before his death. Countless times over the years, Obi-Wan found himself speaking to the air, fingers wrapped around the smooth river stone Qui-Gon had given him, as if his master might somehow hear him. Okay, it's fine the way you have it. Qui-Gon gave him. I think I said had given, so I think they're both fine. We're going to keep going. He loved someone within the Order once. Long ago, Obi-Wan continued. Did you know that? Anakin shook his head, but Obi-Wan's smile faded, shadowed by the recollection. And then he watched her die. Anakin straightened, alarm flickering in his gaze. Who? A Jedi Master named Hal. She and Qui-Gon were very close. As a Padawan, I always wondered about the nature of their relationship, but I never asked. Now I wish I had. Maybe something he might have shared would give me more clarity now. What happened to her? She was sent to New Absalon, caught in the political turmoil there, and taken captive by a warlord named Balag. He sought to use her as a pawn for his political schemes. He tortured her for weeks. Obi-Wan swallowed hard as if trying to swallow down the taste of bile. Okay, so you've got an echo on swallow. You know what? You could easily swap out the second swallow with fought, as if fighting down the taste of bile. Yeah, maybe. Maybe. Something. It could work. Let's see. Let's see. We are going to pick up. We're going to pick up right here. Obi-Wan swallowed hard as if trying to hold down the taste of bile. The council wanted to remain neutral on the issue, and they didn't intervene, but we defied their ruling, driven by Qui-Gon's feelings for her. But his shoulders fell. By the time we found her, she was broken. The damage had been too great, and she died in his arms. Obi-Wan paused, the memory weighing heavily in his voice. I remember the look on his face, as if the world had shifted under his feet. He was always so composed, but that day, something in him cracked. I thought I might lose him to grief, or worse, to the dark side. For a while, it felt like the light inside him had dimmed. He looked at Anakin, the intensity of the memory still present, even after all these years. There was a moment after her death, standing in that cell, when I saw him falter. He didn't say anything, but I could feel it, a battle waging inside him. He merely slipped into darkness. He later admitted as much. Obi-Wan's voice softened, turning inward. He told me that it was the presence of our Jedi brothers and myself that kept him from falling, but I don't know if he ever truly forgave himself for not reaching her sooner, or the council for failing her. Anakin looked deeply disturbed. I had no idea. I think I was about 13 when it happened. I'm going to pause. So we have Anakin look deeply disturbed, and it works. It works for the voice and the flow and the tone. I'm just going to note that in lieu of saying that Anakin looked deeply disturbed, you could give Anakin a facial expression or a body language. Even his, voice could come out thready, or his eyes could be just, in shock, where they could widen. There's a ton of different things you could use just to give him a facial expression, or body language would probably be helpful here. It's reading fine. Like, it's reading well. Don't get me wrong. It is not reading fine. It's reading very well, enough that I had to make myself stop to note that suggestion. And so we are going to just keep right on going. But I'm just going to note this was an opportunity for you to give an expression in lieu of saying. Okay. Sometimes when we use the word looked, it could be one of those words that could be an alert to us to revisit the sentence and say, okay, hey, I used the word looked here. Is there a chance that instead of saying looked, I could give a description of something? Okay. So it's one of those words that I might give a pass through my document and look for the word looked. I'd look for the word back. I'd look for anything that would be what I would consider distancing words, to which I would have a list, and each word would get a pass. If I was writing professionally, yes, that's true. I do literally do that. But this is one of those words that can be a little alert to you. You are going to use it sometimes, just like this, but it is still worth pausing and saying, hey, is this something that I can give a description to? And then it's more of a showing rather than a telling. It's just an opportunity that you might look for. All right, we're going to keep going. I think I was about 13 when it happened. I was still learning what it meant to be a Jedi and how to uphold the Order's teachings. Seeing him so lost was jarring. I didn't know how to help him. If I'm being honest, watching the depths of his despair after her death put me off the idea of attachments altogether. Hearing the lesson is one thing, but seeing him like that, I never forgot it. It was perhaps another reason nothing ever truly developed between myself and Satine. He was a different master after that. He openly defied the council more often and began to think of himself as more of a wayfinder. I'm going to pause. I'm glad that Anakin is about to ask because I was getting ready to ask the same thing. My reader response was, what is a wayfinder? So we continue because I can see the answer is immediately coming. Yay for you. There we go. A wayfinder, Anakin asked, unfamiliar with the term. It was a path Jedi could take long ago. Those who followed the living force weren't always beholden to the council. They had a looser relationship, focusing on the force's will above the order's dogma. It's a path that's close to us now. Anakin raised an eyebrow, curious. Did he love her? Obi-Wan hesitated for a moment, then nodded. I believe he did. Anakin leaned back against the wall, contemplating. If it were him in your boots, I think he'd face this challenge head on. He wouldn't care what the Order thought. In fact, if recent events have shown us anything, it's that the Council is a bit out of touch. Obi-Wan couldn't help but smile. If it were Master Qui-Gon, I feel certain he would have told the Council to hell with their code and trained Solon himself. I agree, Anakin said with a grin. And I think if he were here now, he'd probably tell you to not be afraid. But I am afraid, Anakin, Obi-Wan confessed, his voice softening. What if I take on this responsibility and grow to love that boy? What if something happens to him and I can't protect him? What if my attachment becomes too powerful? What if he leads me to darkness? What if it leads me to darkness? Anakin's expression grew serious, his gaze unwavering as he grabbed Obi-Wan's shoulder. Attachments don't lead to darkness. Fear of losing them does. Death is part of life, Obi-Wan. Once you accept that, the darkness can never take you. Obi-Wan looked at his former apprentice, surprised by the clarity and conviction in Anakin's words. In that moment, he felt a swell of pride. And what if something happened to Padme? Or your child? What would you do? Obi-Wan countered. We got a comma. I would just make it a period. We can keep going. Anakin's face tightened, the silence that followed. Heavy and uncertain. Did we? Okay. I kind of don't think we need this part. Anakin's face tightened. Something is awkward about this sentence right here. I'm going to read it as it is. Anakin's face tightened, the silence that followed, heavy and uncertain. I don't know if there's a punctuation thing or it's just something's not working for it. I would think Anakin's expression tightened, Anakin's face tightened, the lines of Anakin's face were drawn in uncertainty if you wanted. Yeah, I'd go with that. We're going to keep going. Obi-Wan could see that despite his wisdom. This was still a fear that plagued Anakin. That's what I have you for, my friend, Anakin finally said, his voice calm but steady. My Jedi family, to help me through the darkness. Shadow can't exist without light. If one exists, so too must the other. Maybe that's where our Jedi ancestors placed their faith when it comes to attachments. Obi-Wan smiled, his heart lighter than before. Sometimes it surprises me, the things you say. I hear the wisdom of a great Jedi Master, and yet I still expect to see a 10-year-old boy in the sands of Tatooine, obsessed with pod racing. Anakin grinned, the tension broken. I still love pod racing. Well, you've got another 10-year-old boy to focus on now. Hopefully he listens better than I did. Obi-Wan chuckled softly. One can hope, Anakin. One can hope. Obi-Wan almost smiled, touched by his Padawan. Thank you, Anakin. They sat in companionable silence for a moment before Obi-Wan decided to lighten the mood. You know, it's a little unnerving for a Skywalker to be the voice of reason. Anakin playfully nudged Obi-Wan. Well, every once in a while, even Skywalkers have moments of enlightenment. Anakin's counsel seemed to strike a chord within Obi-Wan, reminding him of the significance of embracing change and the depths of the connection he shared with his son. What was she like? Anakin asked. Obi-Wan's face brightened with a fond smile as he delved into memories of the dynamic presence that was Cressida. A force of nature, he chuckled, shaking his head. Confident, a troublemaker who rarely knew when to back down, no matter how outmatched she was. His gaze softened. He engaged in an enduring prank war that landed us in hot water with our masters and even Master Yoda on more than one occasion. He was less than amused. Yet I recall Cressida had a knack for batting those lovely eyes and charming her way out of trouble. I wasn't so fortunate. Anakin's surprise was impossible to conceal at Obi-Wan's revelation. Obi-Wan Kenobi, a prankster? Obi-Wan met Anakin's surprised gaze and nodded. Believe it or not, the younger me wasn't always so serious. When we first met, she seemed like such a small, pint-sized thing. I made a joke about her height, and her response was to kick me in the shin. As Obi-Wan spoke, a fleeting ease filled the air, memories of happier times. She was happy, warm, utterly fearless. It was impossible to be in a foul mood with her around. Master Qui-Gon even had quite the soft spot for her, so much that sometimes I thought he preferred her to me. Yet, as the memories lingered, a shadow veiled Obi-Wan's face, and the light in his eyes surrendered to a profound sadness. Okay, I'm going to pause for a second. So I'm having a couple of thoughts, and I wonder if it's causing me to kind of mess up my lines a little bit. And I'm thinking that the key things that I want to point out. I would keep an eye out for long sentences, screen for adverbs, and I would look for the word voice so that you can see how often you're describing someone's voice. If you're doing it, I'd say, too close together throughout the chapter, then you might look for another way to describe the person with like their facial expression or their body language. Look for another description. Let's see. What else could I suggest here? I feel like there was something else. Those are some of the things that are jumping out at me, and rather than continue to stop and show them to you again, the other thing to keep an eye out for is when you have the same character speaking in one paragraph and then immediately speaking again at the beginning of another. Typically, the dialogue is passed back and forth between the two characters, which I know that you know already. Another thing to do is to show an action, body language, or something of the sort to give us a glimpse of the other character and before this character continues. Those are things that I'm noting, and we are going to, otherwise it's reading beautifully. So those are things that would be almost next level, like, because this is reading so beautifully. Like it really has a great voice. It's got great visual. It's got a really great emotion to it. I love the tone of it. So it's going really well. But if I'm to give you any bits of advice, those are the things that I have noticed throughout this read. I think I've probably cited one example at least of each. And so to just summarize thus far, those are still things that I'm noticing even at this point. Okay. We're going to read on down to this line, and then we're going to get started on the last, what might be the last part. I'm not really sure. We're going to keep going. Okay. Let's see where we were at. She was happy, warm, utterly fearless. It was impossible to be in a foul mood with her around. Master Qui-Gon even had quite the soft spot for her, so much that sometimes I thought he preferred her to me. Yet, as the memories lingered, a shadow veiled Obi-Wan's face, and the light in his eyes surrendered to a profound sadness. What changed? Anakin asked. Obi-Wan's reply hung in the air, each word carrying a weight that left Anakin shocked and speechless. She killed her master. What? What? She did what? Okay, wait. It doesn't mean that she was like, there could have been an accident, or he could have done something crazy, like he could have lost his mind, or maybe he went to the dark side and she had to stop him. In typical Jedi fashion, it could be any one of those scenarios. So it doesn't mean it's done. But still, as a reader, I'm like, what? She did what? Wait, what? But also, I can explain it all away. We can explain it away. We're gonna find out. We're keep going. To be continued, because it looks like we're jumping over into Cressida's mindset. Let's see what happens. Cressida slumped against the cool sink, the chill biting at her skin as she wiped her lips with the back of her hand. The bitter, acidic taste of vomit clung stubbornly to her tongue. Each breath was a struggle, shaky and ragged, as she gripped the sink's edge, her fingers digging into the metal grounding her. Bone-white knuckles contrasted sharply with the chrome. Gasping, she splashed icy water on her face, hoping the shock would clear her head and dispel the dizziness. It didn't, but for a moment the chill provided a brief distraction. She closed her eyes, letting the water run down her cheeks, pooling in the hollow of her throat. Gradually her heartbeat slowed, the panic fading, if only for a few seconds. She spat into the sink again before reaching for a towel, trying to erase any signs of what had just happened. The nausea had passed, but exhaustion gnawed at her insides. Staring into the sink, she focused on the rhythmic drip of water before daring to look up. The mirror didn't lie. Her reflection was hollow and pale, skin stretched too thin over sharp cheekbones, dark circles framing eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. This was the face of a woman battling something she didn't understand. Maybe it was just fatigue, the stress of new surroundings, unfamiliar food, and disrupted routines. That's what she told herself. But in the quiet of the refresher, with no one to fool, a deeper unease whispered that it was something more. Was it a coincidence that had started the first day back in the council chamber? The moment he was there, when their worlds collided again? Straightening up, she smoothed every wrinkle in her clothes with precise movements. Each action felt like an attempt to impose order on her crumbling world. Her armor was slipping, but she couldn't let anyone see. She smiled, but it was thin, just enough to convince anyone who might not look too closely. But the woman in the mirror wasn't deceived. She saw the tremor in Cressida's hands and the weight pressing down on her chest. Stepping out of the refresher, she moved quietly across the room, her gaze softening as it fell on Solon's sleeping form. His chest rose and fell with steady breaths, sandy brown hair tasseled across the pillow. A bit of drool pooled beneath his cheek as he snored lightly, and despite everything, her lips curved into a smile. He was so peaceful, so unaware, untouched by worries or burdens, just a boy, just her son. But that smile faded, replaced by an unnameable ache. Cautiously, she stepped back to avoid waking him and moved toward the small kitchen. Making Sapir tea was a ritual, a steadying process. She filled the kettle and set it on the burner, watching the water come to a boil. The scent of sweet floral leaves began to fill the air as she prepared the cup. Lifting it to her face, she inhaled deeply, letting the aroma calm her, though she didn't drink. The warmth of the cup in her hands and the familiar scent wrapped around her like a comforting blanket. She sank into a chair, tension easing from her shoulders as she closed her eyes for a moment, the untouched cup resting beside her. Rubbing her face, she tried to massage away the weariness that clung to her bones. Suddenly, the sharp buzz of her calm shattered the fragile calm. Calm and calm are like, we're on the last line. I hate for that to happen. Okay. Suddenly, the sharp buzz of her calm shattered the fragile calm. Heart racing, she reached for the device as the message came through. The council had made its decision. Dum, dum, dum. Okay. So, wow. Okay. There's a little echo on, and I'm going to call it a sound echo, where they have similar COM, CM, and I kind of thought, I think I said it right the first time, but in the back of my mind, I was immediately going, oh, they sound too much alike, that I don't know if it sounded clear enough. If I was reading it, it'd be silently reading it. It's just fine. If we were writing professionally, I might suggest a change, but for the sake of, I know what it was, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. It just sounded, I was worried it just sounded odd when I said it out loud. So I'm going to shift around here for a second. So your visuals in this opening right here are fantastic. Just absolutely great. Beautiful, stunning, loved it. Really enjoyed it, even though she was getting sick. I mean, I'm sorry that was happening to her, but you wrote it beautifully. You described the whole sensation and everything just very, very well. Your writing, as always, is just beautiful. Your voice, the tone, the cadence to the story is just fantastic, and I absolutely enjoy it so much. And I'm like ready to move on to the next chapter now. I'm like, oh, I want to keep going. So I kind of mused over my thoughts above the line for overall pointers of things to kind of keep an eye out for. And overall, I am wondering what's wrong with Cressida. And I hope that you don't kill her off. I hope it's not like that, because one of the things I noticed as I was reading throughout this chapter, reader musing wise, was that so many women had died. It was always the man that made it out on the other side. I feel like there was more than one backstory that was kind of given of interactions where, like, what was it, Qui-Gon had, what was his companion's name? I feel like she died, and then someone else earlier on I feel like was mentioned, and they lost someone, but it was always the woman dying, and I hate that. I mean, I hate that to be like a thing. Anyway, that bothered me as a reader, but that's a reader thought, like a reader preference thought, a frustration on a reader. I would say a reader slash writer, because there are some things that I'm going to get parallel here. It is not to this note specifically, but as like a reader preference kind of thing. You know how like there's certain things that you prefer to read, certain genres or topics or whatever. Likewise, there are trends in things. For example, one trend that just really never, it hit it big with a lot of people because it was staying true to real life, but it did not hit it big with me. And in fact, it absolutely frustrates the crap out of me, and I don't like it at all. And I'll tell you why. I'm going to tell you why before I tell you what it is. And it's because reading is my journey away to places that either really don't exist or that you are never going to go to. It's a break from reality. It's a joy, okay? It's an adventure. It's possibility. It's all these amazing, unattainable things that we can reach in this imaginary world. And I feel like it's ruined sometimes by trends. And in this case, for me, it's a huge turnoff when the hero is killed. So it's a big trend that has kind of come up where either a hero or their immediate sidekick, their BFF or their buddy, but a major character is killed. And they're like, oh, well, that's just true to life. You can't, whatever. I don't like it. And I don't like it for the reasons I already listed. It's something that turns me off. And I get really frustrated with it. And I'll give you another example. In my own fandom, recently, Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird finished up the Turtle Saga with a comic book series. What did they call it? Oh gosh, The Last Ronin. And I know that it's Michelangelo, but I also know that in it, all three of his brothers are already dead, and they kill him off in the end. So I own a couple of the comics. I did not finish buying the series, and I've not read any of them because I'm kind of already disappointed, and I didn't even start reading it yet. I think that it's sad. There's no need to kill them off because they're not real. They can live forever, and they can be immortal. And in a way, they always will be, because you can go back and read the part where they were still alive, but it's still sad. And I just don't want that for my break from reality. Call me selfish, call me unrealistic, call me a writer. All right, guys, that is it for this episode. I'm going to read the Great Wicked's notes, and we're going to wrap up. Okay. Hey, you, why haven't you subscribed to Red's channel? By the way, I'm going to agree with you, Great Wicked. If you're listening, if you've been around, if you're hovering, hey, there's one of two things. You can either like and subscribe, do that whole spiel that everybody else on YouTube says that I don't push down your throat every day, or you could actually reach out to me. I don't bite, and I'd love to read for you. First chapters are free. And yes, I do private reads if you're shy. Those do cost a little bit, but not much. I'm super reasonable. You buy me a cup of coffee, I'll do a read for you, public or private. And we're going to keep going. Each subscription saves the life of one ladybug. Not really. Hi, Red. Thank you again. You're worth approximately 10 trillion red starbursts. Those are the best ones. Have a great day. Thank you so much to the Great Wicked for trusting me with your words and letting me read this beautiful story when I can get my mouth to work correctly. And it took a minute there in the beginning to warm up my brain, but I think we found a rhythm. So guys, all that said, thank you so much for everything. Thank you for coffee. Thank you for likes, subscribes, and follows and comments. And thank you for trusting me with your words. I can't wait to see you guys next time on Mystery Red Reads. I'll see you then.